bit differently today. We have this webinar coming at you pre-recorded as opposed to live. So I think this is one of the first times we do this. So if you have questions after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. My name is Jane Stevens, and I am here to facilitate the training. As you guys know, we do trainings every day except Friday. So new agent orientations are on Monday and Wednesday. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, we offer rotating topics. So this one was actually a request. So I love when that happens. Thank you so much for requesting this. So hopefully I answer your questions and you guys are a little bit more knowledgeable on pre-sales. So that's the topic for today. So let's jump right in. So first of all, I wanted to share with you where you can find pre-construction developments. So there's a great website that I recommend. It's called Buzzbuzzhomecom. So you can see that up at the top there. I've put in a red square so you can see what the URL is. So Buzzbuzzhome.com is going to take you to this website. And as I said, it's a great resource. So all you have to do is put in the area that you're looking in, and it will populate all of the pre-construction sites that are in that particular area. So if you are looking for something in Oakville, that's obviously what I searched for before, because that's what you can see at the bottom there, what's trending in Oakville right now. But obviously you can search any area. And I believe this is Canada-wide. So if you have a client who's interested in pre-construction in Richmond Hill, whatever it is, go ahead, use this website, type it into the search box, and you'll see a whole bunch of different developments highlighted there for you. The great thing is that BuzzBuzz Home is not a realtor's website, so this is really a resource that you can use. So again, feel free to search, and what it does do as well is it tells you the timeline for each of these developments. So if you have a client who's interested in purchasing a pre-construction and they kind of don't want to really move into it until 2022, then you'll be able to see that. So one of the questions that came up in this request for this particular webinar is, how do you become a VIP agent? So again, use this website, take a look at what's coming up, what's 2 years out from now, contact that developer and, get on their list. So really it's going to be up to you to call developers directly, let them know that you potentially have several buyers for their particular development. And you really want to be on that VIP list, because what they're going to do is they're going to send an email out to their preferred realtors. So hopefully that includes you. And not only will they keep you posted on the progress, but they will give you VIP access, which means early access for you to come in and show your clients what it is that they're offering. So definitely use this as a resource. Definitely reach out to different developments and get in touch with those developers and get yourself on that VIP list. So that's really how you're going to break into this. Absolutely. So if you've never done pre-construction before, I've highlighted, I think it's 10 steps that you need to know. So let's talk about it. The contract. So first and foremost, if you do have clients that you have taken to a future development, you'll notice that the agreement of purchase and sale is not the one that we're used to. So it's going to be the developer's contract. So it's written by a lawyer who is making sure that the developer is covered and can make a whole bunch of changes. So it's really a long document, and included with that are a lot of disclosure documents. So really, what I'm going to talk about next is that there's a cooling off period, and that really gives your client time to take that contract to their lawyer for them to review it and just make sure that that developer hasn't slipped in anything that is kind of out of order, right? So definitely you'll have all of the terms in there, and as well as the deposit structure, which I'll talk about in a minute. So it's an agreement that's fairly standardized. It's not something that you sort of go back and forth and do as much negotiation as you would with a resale property. So instead, what you should do is take it to a lawyer during your cooling off period. So that takes me to my next slide, which is actually, no, it doesn't. Before I get to the cooling off period, I'll talk about the deposit. So as I'm sure you know, the deposit is, with pre-construction, it's a little bit higher than what they would have to give as a deposit with a resale property. They do have to initially provide a deposit of 5% upon signing the agreement, which Similar to resale, it is refundable if they decide not to proceed later on, but there will be a structure so that eventually the deposit will equal 15 to 20% of the purchase price. So just keep that in mind. Definitely take a look at what those terms are, because it might be, yes, 5% upon submitting or signing the agreement, but then maybe another 5% in 30 days, and then 5% in 90 days, 5% in 180 days. So really make sure that your client is aware of that and knows that is expected of them. So definitely that will be highlighted in the sales center, and it definitely, the buyer will be well aware of that. But really just make sure that it is within their realm, right? Sometimes it's a little bit easier and it's not, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. Sometimes there's a little bit more time to come up with the additional deposit. So, that's definitely a difference with pre-sales as opposed to resales that we're used to. So the cooling off period that I mentioned before, so in Ontario, every purchaser of a new condo has 10 days to reconsider their purchase. So those are, yes, calendar days, not business days. So you have 10 days cooling off, which is where the buyer should definitely be arranging their financing, confirming their pre-approval, and having the agreement reviewed by their lawyer, which I already mentioned. So really, put the expertise on the lawyer to take a look at that contract, because every developer is going to have a different contract. They may be slightly the same, but again, as I said at the beginning, the contract that they have in place is drafted by their lawyer. So make sure that your buyer has a lawyer to make sure that all of their interests are also considered in there. So if the buyer changes their mind, as a result of what the lawyer comes back to them with, if it does seem unreasonable for whatever reason, then they can back out of the contract and their deposit is returned without deduction. So again, something to note, this cooling off period is your conditional period, right? If we're comparing it to resale properties. All right, so as you know, with pre-sales, pre-construction, there's often a waiting time. So builders can provide an expected completion date. If you guys have purchased pre-sales condos for yourself, then I'm sure you're aware of this. Maybe you even experienced it, but condos are rarely completed on time. So builders do have the right to delay for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes those delays can be really, really lengthy. So just again, make sure that the buyer is aware of that and they're not in a position where they absolutely need to move on that particular day, because chances are it will be extended. So the waiting game, it's just part of, the situation with pre-construction. Yeah. The waiting game and change. Change is definitely the name of the game. So builders have a fair amount of leeway to make changes to the units and buildings, even if they've pre-sold them. So it says here, we've seen builders add or subtract floors, change layouts, decide that the rooftop pool should go in the basement. So buyers are protected from any material changes, but you might be surprised to find out what is and not considered material. So read the sales agreement and be prepared to be flexible. Also something that you might want to bring up when that lawyer is looking at the contract, what is considered a material change. So something that they hopefully, can elaborate on, so that you're not surprised. So when the condo is built and ready to move into, there is a period of interim occupancy. So that's where the buyer can take possession, so they can actually move into the unit. But during that period of interim occupancy, so interim meaning in between, the buyer does not actually own the condo yet. So that takes place once the building has been registered, which I'll talk about next. But right now they're simply paying the builder an amount roughly equal to what their mortgage payment should be, although it is not reducing their actual mortgage. So their mortgage doesn't take effect until the registration of the building. So so no mortgage has been given at this point. So that's just how that's set up. There's almost two dates. There are two dates with pre-construction. So there's the interim occupancy date where the buyer can move in, and then there's the building registration. So once the building has passed all of the city inspections and gone through all the processes to become a legal entity, then condos are officially registered. And so it's during that period that ownership is then transferred to the buyers and those mortgages come into effect. So those buyers at this point officially become owners. So the registration period can take anywhere from 3 months to 2 years, though it says here it typically happens between 4 and 8 months after people begin to move in for the interim occupancy period. So There you have it. The building registration is a separate date, and that's when your mortgage takes effect. So the builder's closing costs. When the unit is officially registered and you close on the purchase, you'll be responsible for all sorts of closing costs that don't apply to resale units. So these are builder adjustments. They include development and education costs, HST on appliances, utility connection fees. So these builder closing costs can amount to 1 to 3% of the original purchase price. So definitely something to keep in mind, definitely something to talk to your clients about. So if you're looking at taking over someone else's contract, which is an assignment, which we'll talk about briefly at the end, just see if the original purchaser capped the amount of these costs when they originally negotiated the unit. So that's something that can be done. Again, something to discuss with your lawyer or your buyer's lawyer. So make sure that they have lots of money put aside for closing costs is basically the takeaway with this one. So surprises will happen and you need to be prepared for them. So make sure that they have enough money set aside for closing costs, because this is not what they would see in a resale property, but specific to pre-sales. So builders closing costs. Condo fees in new buildings. So this is something that when you look at the disclosure documents, you'll see that the condo fees are typically set pretty low. And that's partly because they are estimated years in advance of the condo being built, and partly because they don't know the actual cost of renting the building. So it's kind of their best guess. And they do like to state it low so that, again, it's attractive to those buyers. So again, keep in mind, again, yeah, that's a sales strategy, but expect condo fees in new buildings to increase substantially during the first 2 years. And they say here it's usually 10 to 20%. So again, something to keep in mind, something to forewarn your buyers about, because if that's part of their selling feature, that they really like the fact that it's $120 a month as opposed to $333 a month, give them a heads up that that may change pretty quickly. So condo fees are set low at the beginning. So definitely let your buyers know about that. And then the condo reserve fund, so this is something else that's going to contribute to their costs, is that your buyer will need to contribute 2 months condo fees in order to contribute to the condo reserve funds, the emergency fund. So if anything happens, as you know, in resale properties, the condo fees go towards the maintenance of the building, and then there's some set aside to go towards any emergencies in the future. So of course, with new construction, they don't have that set aside yet. So they do ask their owners to contribute 2 months condo fees to that emergency fund, and that typically happens at the time of closing. So again, something else you want to bring up with your buyers so they're fully aware of that. All right, and this is the biggie. This is definitely the kicker, the HST. So unlike resale condos, new condos are subject to HST. Yeah, so you'll likely qualify for an HST rebate. And I guess the builder sort of assumes that you will receive this rebate. So the rebate is already factored in. So just know about this. The HST is not included in the purchase price. So definitely something to consider, especially when we're looking at 13%. Yeah, you may have to pay thousands of dollars in HST upon closing. So HST rules are confusing. That's true. Make sure to get legal advice about whether you qualify for the HST rebate before you buy a condo. I won't get into that because I am not an expert on HST rebate. So definitely, make sure that you understand it. And if not, definitely that's part of the conversation that your buyer should be having with their lawyer. Excellent. So that's the HST. Assignment sales. All right. So we have David Woodside, who's joined us before. He's amazing. He's our in-house lawyer. He's talked about this at length, but just as a general overview, assignment sales are a sales transaction where the original buyer of the property, so the original buyer of that pre-sale condo, has decided to assign their contract, so their rights and obligations, to another party who's the assignee. So basically they don't take possession, they transfer the contract to somebody else who will then assume the rights and obligations of that contract, and then they will be the ones to ultimately complete the deal with the seller. So an assignment clause allows the buyer of a home to sell the place before they take possession of it. So that's a really, general description or definition, I guess I should say, of assignment sales. And this is where a lot of questions do come up. Again, I would love it if David Woodside was here with me to answer questions about this and really get into the details of it. But there is a form available to us in web forms that we can do if you are working with an assignment sale. So I've also had questions come in about listing assignments. So that can be a little bit tricky in terms of sometimes if the developer still has units that are for sale, they're not going to want to compete with you if you have a client who's looking to sell their condo that hasn't been completed yet. So they may have restrictions around how you advertise that assignment sale. So you may not be allowed to post it on MLS. So it's a big question. How do we advertise these assignment sales if we have a client who wants to get out of theirs? Really, this is kind of a niche and something that you might decide you want to specialize in, because there are realtors out there who have developed a network of investors who basically wait for assignment sales to purchase, to come up so that they can purchase them. So, if you have a network like that, then, there's your answer. But otherwise, typically, you're going to have to get a little bit creative because we won't be able to post them on MLS for the most part. So, but yeah, if you're representing a buyer who's looking at an assignment sale, then it is a little bit tricky in terms of the math, the initial deposit and, the lift on the price. So for example, if somebody did buy that pre-construction at X amount of money, they're now wanting Y amount of money, it's usually higher than X. So it gets just a little bit tricky about closing and who goes to what. So definitely not only, have a lawyer involved, but initially even just let your growth manager know that you have an assignment sale coming up, and they're vastly knowledgeable on how to prepare those forms. So let me see. I think I sped through that pretty quickly. And since this is a pre-recording, I won't be able to take your questions live, but definitely let me know if you have questions. I'm going to post this to the workplace group so that you guys have this, and then you'll be able to see any comments on the thread. And I will refer back to David Woodside's presentation that he did a while ago on assignments. I'm going to actually see if there's a recording of that, and I'll post that in addition to this webinar so that you can kind of view both of them hand in hand, because he goes into quite a bit of detail, and it was a live session, so questions were asked and answers were given. So for now, I'm going to leave you with that. So again, we did things a little bit differently today where this was pre-recorded, so thanks for accommodating that. I will be back live next week, and we'll be doing the new agent orientation on Monday and Wednesday, and a really important webinar on Tuesday on web forms and actually walking you through the transaction. So I'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.